Hello, amazing teachers. Let's take a look at the lesson today. This is a doctrinal mastery review, and I've got a couple of ideas that might help to pace it just a little bit better. Now, the lesson itself starts here with the students developing a real-life situation. I wonder if modeling this for students before we have them do it might work a little bit better. And you could make the choice whether or not to adapt the lesson this way based on your class. But let's just take a look. What I would propose is that we start our lesson right here at the quote. But before we get to the quote, I'm going to recommend getting this picture. I found this picture on the church's website, and I'll include a link to it in the description of the video. But here's how I would use it. I would display this picture, and then I would ask, what did Joseph Smith do to successfully apply scriptural teachings? Now, this is a rephrasing of this statement up here. Now, let's assume that your students, maybe they're not as familiar with the Joseph Smith story, in which case, maybe ask this question. What is happening in this picture? And you might say, what's happening in this picture of Joseph Smith? Just depends on how familiar your kids are with this. But let them tell the story a little and then ask, what did Joseph Smith do to successfully apply scriptural teachings? What we want to do is help the students to realize that Joseph, as Elder Christensen says here, allowed the scriptures to penetrate his heart. He pondered them deeply. He applied them to a situation, then he acted. And that's a pattern that will have the students identify. So, inasmuch as students can identify those things as they think about the Joseph Smith story, then bring in the quote, and then take a look at the pattern here and put it up on the board someplace. Let the students look at that. Could be on a handout, could be on a board, could be on a slide, so that they can be thinking about this and what they just learned about Joseph Smith, and then walk them through an application of this principle. I'm going to include this PDF document. It's a collection of real-life scenarios. This was actually put together by a colleague of mine when he served as a bishop, of actual experiences. And so you might choose to use one of these to practice with your students how to do what we're about to ask them to do. So here's one of the situations from this document, and I'll link to it in the description. You could pick one of these and then have the students use this pattern and use these doctrinal mastery scriptures. Now here's a key. A lot of times we're trying to look for one that answers all the questions. And I will recommend that you invite your students to simply look for a scriptural doctrine that addresses part of the problem. I don't think there's going to be one verse that's going to solve the problem, but a problem is often made up of many different parts. So have them just look at these scriptures for solving or addressing part of the challenge. So, for example, you may use, you receive no witness till after the trial of your faith, but maybe that isn't the whole answer. So don't expect that we could just pick one and that's the answer, but pick part. Talk about, someone might pick charity. How could charity help somebody in the challenge that they are in? How could it help them to be thinking outside of themselves or understanding the situation that they have with somebody else through the eyes of Christ? Those kinds of things. So there you go. Start with a picture. Have them think about Joseph. Then go to that quote. Talk about that pattern. And then model this process. Have them share a situation with them. Have them use that pattern to use one of these scriptures to create a solution or address at least part of the problem, and invite students to share what they've discovered. Then you can jump right to having the students create their own scenario using that template. Now they're already prepared to try out that pattern. So I think that might be a great way to help students to prepare for this activity and get the most out of it. I hope that you find that helpful. Have a great lesson.